And now I would like to introduce our moderator, Anupam Govil, and our first fireside chat, the disruptive potential of new real-time economy, harnessing 5G, IoT, and beyond.
So how are you all doing? Isn't it great to be outside of that Zoom frame, seeing whether your colleague is actually wearing pants or shorts? Nothing can beat that personal touch. So I'm going to ask my fellow Fireside Chat speakers to join me. We have Srinivasa Samudrala. He's the SVP Digital and IoT for Infinite. And then we have Dave Singh, Head of Autonomous Robotics, Drones, and Intelligent Machines with Qualcomm. So a great topic, the disruptive potential of the real-time economy, harnessing 5G, IoT, and beyond. The real-time economy is here to stay, and we'll talk a little bit more about it. But more importantly, 5G is not just another G. And that's what I'm going to get my speakers to talk about. What is that potential? What does it unleash in terms of business innovation, new real-time applications, and so on? So I'm going to start with Dave first. Tell us about your role at Qualcomm and what are you guys doing in this space?
Sure. Mic's on. Yeah. Thanks. And that's a good question you started with is, what is 5G, right? So to begin with, I'm Dave Singh. I'm the general manager for the Robotics, Drones, and Intelligent Machines business at Qualcomm, which is part of the IoT segment. And for those who don't know, Qualcomm is a pioneer in communication technologies for mobile. But we have consciously diversified into automotive and IoT. And IoT is the fundamental building block for the digital transformation that's happening across various industries. And I lead the drones and robotics business, which is fundamental to that transformation.
Great. And Srini, you want to talk about your Infinite's partnership with Qualcomm and what kind of innovation you're driving through that?
Sure. So just thank you so much again for having us here. My name is Srinivasa Samudrala, and I'm from Infinite. We are a digital transformation company. So our partnership with Qualcomm, now Qualcomm from a 5G, IoT, AI perspective to enable digital transformation for the world in general, creates everything from the chipsets. They have a vast ecosystem of device manufacturers who are bringing these devices to life. What we do, and the reason we have the strategic partnership with Qualcomm is we bring the software components of that technology, we bring the services components of the technology to enable that digital transformation and roll out that digital transformation to our customers and their customers as well. So bringing the software in, bringing the services in, enabling, working with the Qualcomm ecosystem, working with all the chips, bringing the right software technologies into it to take this everywhere. And we have a global go-to-market strategy. We develop joint IP together, and we do a lot of work very cohesively, not just with Qualcomm, but all the partner ecosystem of Qualcomm as well. And again, the goal is to roll out digital transformation globally, enable operational efficiencies, improve, create the just-in-time, real-time experiences that user wants. So if it's the user experience, the back-end services, the cloud services, we do all of that along with Qualcomm.
Yeah. So I guess we live in times where I think a lot of the market and business models are being defined by the needs of the Generation Z, or what I like to call Generation Now. I want it now, and wherever I am. So talk to us about the real-time economy. What is the real-time economy, and what are its implications?
You started out saying the right theme there. It's more about the expectation of consumers today. It is expected that things are on demand. It's not only expectation, but consumers demand real-time economy. I mean, I'll give you an example. Uber. A lot of you guys take Uber. You want it now, not tomorrow, right? And same thing is happening across industries, across segments. Retail is moving from brick and mortar to digitization happening. Now you order your stuff, you get it today, tomorrow. And as you see real-time economy is going to be like, I want it now, and how can I get it? That's when deliveries with autonomous drones and others come in picture as well. So real-time economy is more of the need of the consumer, and for that, it's just not the consumer is the front-facing. And the implication of this means to enable that, you have to have all of the back-end also real-time. It starts from the factories. Factories, industries have to be real-time. What does that mean? That means you have to have reconfigurable factories, lights-out manufacturing. You have to have warehouses in the middle that are lights-out manufacturing, supporting the light-out manufacturing, fulfillment centers that can fulfill the demands of the consumers, enabling this real-time economy. And similarly, this goes on and on when it comes to precision agriculture, enabling real-time requirements of the consumers. When it comes to mining, healthcare, everything.
Every industry.
Across all the industries. So that's the theme, basically.
Yeah. What is your take, Srini?
So, yeah, and to add to that, right, like Dave said, there's so many different verticals. And you might be wondering, okay, why does agriculture require real-time economies, right? But this is a real use case. When you're spraying insecticides or on crops, you want to do it at the right time. So we actually have technology that we built with Qualcomm that identifies what kind of insects that might be detrimental to your crop would come in there, and then the drones would go out and spray those pesticides at the right time. And that is real-time economy. You don't normally think of real-time economy when you're thinking of rural areas, but that's true. And then you have the other aspect of, you can call it rural, where all the wind farms are, for example, in America. Now, inspections of wind farms, that's a lot of work, and it's expensive, but it has to get done. And using the technology with drones, the AI in the cameras, the AI chips that Qualcomm is building, along with all the software that we are putting together, we can do that very, very quickly and very cheaply. And that's where, when you say real-time economy, it's not just about everything has to happen now, but I am not willing to pay a price for it. That's what consumers want. They want it now, but they don't want to pay the price of now. And using drones, using all these technologies, we are able to do it quickly, do it now, and do it cheaply as well. And that's where this is also important when you talk about economies, the current economic state, which is unpredictable. People are like, oh, why should we invest in these technologies? No, this is the right time to invest in these technologies, on the contrary. So that it goes across the spectrum from there. And with enterprises, Industry 4.0, automation, being able to automate those machines so that you're able to get lights-out manufacturing, which reduces your cost of operations, and the AI analyzes that to go out and say, okay, you can improve your operational efficiencies even more by tweaking your processes like this. And that's really a journey. It's not something that we'll be able to do in 2 years, 3 years. It started now, it exists today, but to evolve that, it'll take years. And that journey has to start now.
Yeah. So let's talk about 5G. As I mentioned, 5G is not just another G. It's a foundational building block for real-time applications. Interestingly enough, we had the CIO of Qualcomm, Mary Gendron, give a keynote 4 years ago at our Empowering Beyond Summit, and she talked about unleashing the potential of 5G. At that time, 5G hadn't even rolled out on a commercial basis. Of course, now it's out there. But how do you see this 5G technology enabling all of these new innovative applications, and also what are some of the limitations?
Absolutely. So to begin with, you rightfully said it's not another G. We started 5G R&D at least 8 to 10 years ago. And at that time, we were very clear in our mind, 3G to 4G was still a mobile experience, changing from a voice call to data to video, telephony, and all of that. So a lot of things have been enabled by the 4G transformation to begin with. Think about the Ubers of the world and all of that has happened through the 4G transformation. But when we were working on 5G, it was very clear that mobile broadband was one part of it. There's 3 big pillars in 5G that the fundamental technology was built for: mobile broadband, massive IoT, and mission-critical services. So this massive IoT means manufacturing, industrialization. Mission-critical services could include things like connected cars and all of that. So that is...
And the streaming content, where does that fall in? Like being able to see VR on a wireless
That's
headset.
That's an extension of the mobile broadband. So mobile broadband, we did start streaming in 4G itself, right? We are able to stream stuff on YouTube Live right now, for example, that you could watch. But then that XR, VR is an enhancement of the mobile broadband. It falls under the enhancement of the mobile broadband, and then the massive IoT and the mission critical services. So now talking about digital transformation, right? Talking about real-time economies. And like I just explained earlier was that to enable real-time economy, it has to go back all the way to the manufacturing sites, to the agriculture fields, to the mining facilities as well. And how is all of this happening? Just an example, right? So if you want to be able to take an example of a factory, which is old school, and now in the Industry 4.0 transformation, if there is a car manufacturer building a Model 3 and they have higher demand for Model 5, typically to do a reconfiguring of the factory, it takes up to a quarter or 2 quarters for them to change lines. So fast forward to the digital transformation and Industry 4.0 revolution is about flexible manufacturing, flexible reconfigurable factories. What that means is morning shift, you're doing a model. In the evening, you're able to start another model of the product. And how is that possible? Because traditionally, all these machines were wired down with Ethernet wires and all of that. Now and that is important because machine-to-machine communication has to be time-sensitive and time-sensitive networking. With 5G, all of that can be done wirelessly. So now you have factories that can configure on the dime, still maintaining that machine-to-machine communication. So 5G comes with things like ultra-reliable, low-latency communication, time-sensitive network, and many more things. And when you talk about 5G, and previously when you asked the question, 5G is not just another G. It's not next year we won't see 6G. It is a communication fabric of the decade. We are, and for those who don't know, 3GPP is the governing body behind 5G. And right now they are on release 15 of 5G. Like you mentioned, 5G was rolled out in 2019. All the deployments happened 2020, mostly around mobile. So initial releases, release 1 to release 15, are geared towards the mobile broadband. But now they're going into the time-sensitive network, the URLLC, including terrestrial networking, satellite operations kind of thing. So the potential to unlock all these use cases for real-time economy, for digitization, are coming through release 17, 18, and 19. Yeah.
So it's finally coming to fruition.
Correct.
Yeah. And I think I like to explain it this way. When think of the time you had 1G, 2G was the ability to make phone calls walking anywhere, right? It was great. And then we had 3G and BlackBerries. Oh, great! I'm getting email in my BlackBerry. That's awesome. And then came along, 4G, and I was like, email? You can get everything on your mobile device. So the big shift from 3G to 4G was basically 4G started the mobile computing revolution. Nobody had thought about Uber, Uber Eats, delivery, DoorDash, tracking people, things, all of that. It didn't exist before 4G. That was a step change that 4G enabled through its speed from a technology perspective and the coverage. What 5G does that is very, very required, that Qualcomm started researching on since 2008, was adding enormous bandwidth to what you already have, adding many, many more devices. I mean, it's like 1:4,000 or something in terms of the number of devices that can be supported, and then reducing the latency by a factor of, I think, about 100, right?
100.
And that's what's critical. When you talk about the mission-critical applications, why we need 5G, when you're talking about smart cities as an example earlier, when one car is driving next to another car, you have autonomous driving, and one car wants to take a turn, another car has to track that and know it has to react with that low latency, and that's what 5G enables. The throughput that you need for all of these virtual VR devices and headsets, imagine the amount of data coming in. Now imagine the amount of analytics that has to happen on that data coming in to understand what is going on and then send that data back at high speeds. Only 5G can do that. So when we say this 5G is a step up, it's not just a step up, it's a huge step up from 4G, and it is necessary to roll all of these things out, which is why we are not just seeing 5G being rolled out from a perspective of public telephony providers, but even private 5G for industrial automation, for security, for even complexes and all of that. There's a huge demand for that, right? And that's really the foundational layer of this. And then I'll just talk for 2 seconds. On top of that, you add the AI, you add the analytics, you add all those other services that come in, and that's what creates the digital disruption. Now, I cannot tell you how many new companies will be created when you're talking about a worldwide IoT, and you're talking about like thousands more devices than they are today in your home, but it's going to be a lot more.
Yeah. So you gave me a good segue into the next question, which is the hyperconvergence between 5G and AI and IoT, analytics, and so on, right? And the potential for creating these new business applications and new business models and so on. So, so Dave, in your experience, how are you seeing now this technology getting rolled in, bundled with these others to create really disruptive applications?
Yeah, I think that's the fundamental point there is the potential is enormous. I mean, we never thought when we were doing 4G that WhatsApp would be an application. It is the developers who are going to take it and address the needs of the consumer, needs of the industry. So the potential is definitely enormous, and we have not even seen what it can do yet. I mean, think about the smartphone ecosystem, right? People started saying, okay, this is for phone calls, and now what do we do with it? Everything, right? Talking to your mom in India, whatnot. So the potential is enormous, but just to take a step back and few things that we talked about, smart factories to first mile, last mile deliveries, to things like asset inspections, to things like drones for first responders. I walked in a little bit late, but I was seeing that technology being used by police departments for de-escalation. DFR programs, which stand for Drone for First Responders, back in our backyard in Chula Vista in San Diego, all the 911 calls are right now 100% responded using drones. So, and then the beyond visual line of sight operations for delivery and all of that need technology like 5G. So you can imagine the potential is just through the roof.
And there's, I keep talking about the use cases, but you know, in your the whole hyper-convergence of all of these things, I mean, I think of an example where you want to know where, I have this personal experience, right? I ordered a couch, and you know, it came and it seemed to me that it was an old couch. It was a refurbished couch when I bought a new one. I'm like, okay, who do I call? And this was a real experience with first mile, last mile. I called Costco. They were like, okay, we outsourced it to this company. I called the company. They said, oh, we outsourced the last mile delivery to this company. And I'm going, I could have a tracker in that couch installed at the factory, at manufacturing, and if I'm able to track that, I would know that's my couch, that's where it's been, this is how it's come here, and oh, by the way, that's not an old couch, right? And you know, that's a funny example, but there are real examples used in pharmaceuticals, tracking EpiPens, tracking vaccines, tracking critical medicine, tracking organs.
My airline baggage.
Airline baggage. And there's so many in the medical world. Cryogenically freezing important medical equipment, not equipment, but life-saving medicine, and flying them over, and monitoring the temperature and humidity in that cryogenic chamber so that when it gets to your patients, you know you have the total track of, I can use this and it's going to be safe, is extremely critical, right? And combining that with all the AI, machine learning, and operation efficiencies. Now I'm switching over to factories as an example. We do a lot of worker safety things, and that's critical as well. You're talking about a steel plant where the response between when an incident happens and a worker getting to know about it is less than 3 milliseconds, right? And that is where prior 5G with the AI on the camera that recognizes that this incident has happened, it has to send an alert that worker on the watch that he can step away. All of that happens in 2 milliseconds. How does that happen? 5G, AI, IoT, and the whole hyper-convergence around it, right? And guess what? It is much more efficient to do it this way than to do it how people used to do it in the past, where, okay, I'm watching the screen and I'm seeing, okay, what's going on? We'll pick up phone. Not going to work.
Absolutely. And just to elaborate on that, right? COVID vaccine tracking. I mean, it has to be maintained at a degree of temperature throughout the journey. And taking that to the next level of how efficiency of AI, harnessing the power of 5G and IoT is getting together. I'll give an example of the wind turbine, which you talked about. Today, if somebody has to inspect a wind turbine, two things. One is billions of dollars of assets and billions of dollars of energy output coming. Inspection is needed to make sure you're using them efficiently, to make sure the maintenance is done. But moreover, regulation needs, there are regulation needs that's driving inspection. And how is it done today? The 3 people who rappel up and down the wind turbine, turn it off for 8 hours, go inspect. Now fast forward to the age of IoT, AI, and convergence of 5G. That same task is done by using drones in 15 minutes, where the drone flies autonomously and takes the pictures, be able to respond to this, identify a crack, get a ticket out for maintenance, and all of that. So you are seeing a lot of transformation in industries and a lot of services being created on these devices. It's not only the hardware play, but it's the entire services system.
Yeah. And sorry, just one quick point. To add on top of that, right, adding additional automation on top of that. Now, there's the AI in the cameras that recognizes whether there's a crack in the windmill, and we have to fix it. The technology at the back end goes on and makes that call, creates a ticket, gets the part. And then when this happens, there is an AI in the back end learning this entire process and saying, okay, so these kind of windmills from this manufacturer, they were supposed to last for 6 years before they showed up a crack. Now we see that it's lasting for 5 years, so we need to change our inspection method and make sure we have we are inspecting this more regularly. We are planning for that failure. We are preventing that failure. We're going back to the manufacturer and raising a ticket and telling them that, hey, this is going to happen. You need to have more parts. So that entire back-end ecosystem, being able to create this, is also another aspect of that AI that doesn't run on the cameras, but that continuously learns the process. And the whole point of that is to improve the operational efficiencies, to make that process better and better as time passes. And that's really one of the aspects that, it's not really part of that 5G ecosystem, but it still creates that whole digital transformation in that ecosystem.
So this whole last mile logistics problem that's being now solved through this, right? So I know there are companies, very innovative companies like Maternet that actually deliver life-saving drugs in a matter of half an hour, or organ transplants that have short shelf life. But talk to me about how other companies, like a retail company or a healthcare or in any other sector, how they can leverage this innovation within their enterprise environment.
Sure, I can start with that. So what these technologies are doing is truly bringing this connected intelligent edge reality. Before I go into that, talking about how the cloud was the epicenter of AI. Now with the 5G being the pipe between the cloud and the device, there's limited intelligence on device. The intelligence on device is limited because of the cost, the efficiency of power, and all of that. But you're having the cloud and you have the edge. And the 5G is the seamless connectivity that gives you the power of harnessing the intelligence.
Bringing the core to the edge in terms of compute.
On demand, right?
Yep.
So now talking about first mile, last mile delivery. We are next to a port right here. I was walking, when I was driving down, I saw a lot of those containers. There's a significant challenge in the first mile, which I call from ship to the truck, in tracking, in terms of labor involved to do the transportation. And the last mile, which means that when the truck arrives in New York, or when somebody in New York has to deliver this package on First Street, the last mile, these two are the most expensive part of the equation in logistics. And the only way to scale of both of these is through automation, like delivery and all of that. In retail, we are seeing this, and then in between comes the warehouse piece as well, where fulfillment center also needs a lot of automation. And when you talk about one-day delivery, how is it going to happen, and how is it going to happen at scale? It is through automation. Right now, retailers are doing this, where they're using delivery robots. There's companies in LA itself. I have Coco Robotics, Kiwi Robotics. They have sidewalk in Santa Monica, sidewalk delivery bots that are delivering grocery, delivering food. And the cost per mile delivery economics is much more lucrative with robot operation, and that's only the way to scale, because there are things like shortage of labor, training, labor turnaround. With robots, you can definitely scale. So there's a lot of retailers that are using these technologies to aid the last mile delivery costs. And drone delivery is a buzz, right? And when is it going to happen? People ask me a lot. I'm like, will I see a drone come into my backyard and my dog chasing it? Maybe it's going to be a few years out when the regulations and all of this take place. But the critical deliveries, like you talked about in rural areas, blood bank deliveries, organ deliveries, and also the promise of urban air mobility. That's the future, where they're talking about even transporting humans. And to talk about LA, you're stuck in traffic for hours together. You could be going to airport in your own personal Uber flight, right? That is, we are working on those technologies, and that is also going to be a reality. So in terms of logistics, I think there's a lot to be done here, but there's regulations and other things that also need to fall in place. But we are seeing already pilots rolling out, especially in the delivery segment. Again, elaborating a little bit, university campuses are a good example, where you can order food in your dorm, but when the Uber driver arrives, for him to get to the dorm, he doesn't even know how to get there, because the gate is somewhere and the car. And that's where this companies like Starship and Coco are delivering pizzas and all in that last mile delivery areas as well. And that's where the true connected intelligent edge comes in place, where you need intelligence on the bot, but being able to understand its location in an unstructured environment, seeing something that it's not learned before. Now it's able to tap into the cloud to be able to have this federated learning of how to avoid this obstacle or how to navigate around it. So that's all coming in place. The ecosystem is converging. So I think the possibilities are limitless in those things.
So Srini, he talked about also bringing the cloud to the edge, right? Which does it require actually re-architecting your enterprise IT again all over? How do you see that being materialized?
It's a very good question. And the good part of that is, in the last 5 years, there's been so much transformation on how things are deployed on the cloud through Dockerization, Kubernetes, and all of that. Like, literally, it's led the way to, and fortuitously, it's led the way to a point where today, or in 5 years from now, there wouldn't be a cloud in Virginia or a cloud in Ohio that's doing all your compute. You literally could have a cloud compute device in your pocket that's talking to other cloud compute devices on the edge and working things out. There used to be this project called SETI. It would use your home computer to run JavaScript and solve problems. This is going to be the same thing. And the technology is already there. Everyone from Google to Amazon have built all of these in for building what I call like micro clouds or nano clouds that are connected to each other through 5G and are becoming your edge compute on premise. We've done implementations like that. The technology exists. It's the 5G connectivity that enables them, and the AI and all of that can run very easily. There are implementations we've done where even on drones, you can decide what AI you want to put on that drone in the morning and then a different AI in the afternoon for it to do pesticides or just to count your crops, right? So all of those pieces exist today. It's a matter of putting it together and enabling this edge compute on the cloud. And it's like amazing journey, really.
So metaverse, right? Now we are all going to enter the metaverse soon. So again, 5G and all that we've just talked about, that is the clear, kind of doorway into the metaverse, right? What's happening in that area?
Absolutely. I think there's a lot. Again, the possibilities 5 years, 3 years from now, you would see things that we can't even imagine today. Like I made the point earlier, we didn't imagine Uber would be the case when we were working on 4G technology. So metaverse is that other piece where a lot of things can happen. I mean, there's a lot of value on that. I mean, people say there's hype around it, but I think there's real use cases as well, where we, again, walking in a little bit late in the earlier conversation as well, I saw training in metaverse can actually make you prepared for in the real world experiences as well. So metaverse is I think the future in a lot of these areas. You can have retail experiences in metaverse. You can have different experiences in metaverse as well. But then again, when it comes to the technology that's enabling it, we are working on those building blocks. 5G is going to be the key technology because of the massive bandwidth, throughput required, latencies required, and the experiences on XR, VR devices required for all of these to happen. And with those connected devices that are creating these experiences is what I think the fundamental building blocks are being worked on today. And potential is, again, limitless in my opinion.
One of the fastest rising use cases right now for metaverse is casino and gaming. So I guess you don't even need to travel to Las Vegas anymore. You can be in the virtual version of Caesar's Palace.
I don't know how people will like that.
State laws, yeah.
But we're coming to the end of our time here. But I want to close out with this very important question. And Dave, maybe you start with that, is to make all this happen, you still need an ecosystem of partners, right? And so what is your take on it? How can the industry come together to truly unleash the potential of all these technologies and create a better world for everyone?
I'm glad you asked that question, because that is a fundamental key component of any technology come to fruition. I mean, again, I go back to the example of smartphone, because we as technology makers, I'm Qualcomm, but you're not using the Qualcomm to make your chip to make a phone call right now. It would not have come in play if the whole ecosystem did not come together. You need ecosystem of device manufacturers, you need ecosystem of scaling partners, you need ecosystem of developers, you need ecosystem of service providers. Now, fast forward that experience to the drone experience that I talked about. Well, 4 drones for a wind farm. Is that good enough for selling 4 chips? That's not the end game here, right? We are saying creating digital economy that has potential services value over and over usage of these devices. So talking about not only the technology, underlying technology, but having the hardware ecosystem, providing that to the developers on top of it, and the service providers, bringing it all together, the system integrators and the advisors. Because, say, Coca-Cola would want a new plant somewhere. But when you bring the technology together, advisors like you guys and system integrators who bring the robots, the factory lines, and all of them together, it is an ecosystem. I call it as a team sport, basically. No one person can succeed without the other person in the play.
Okay. So 1 minute here, Srini. Back there we were talking about how NASDAQ's down another 500 points today. So digital transformation. We talked about how today every business needs agility, speed, right?
Absolutely.
So how do you think this can get us out of this mess?
So, okay, so heavy question, but I'll try to answer it 1 minute. So when people talk about digital transformation, right, digital transformation is really enabling, making things faster, making them cheaper, and doing it with fewer people. Like, you have the labor shortage going on today. You have the recession in the market, not recession, you have tightness in the market going on today. People keep talking about recession, and then I'm afraid it becomes one. And people talk about, oh, I don't have money to invest in this. But the fact is, investing in these technologies, the ROI comes back very, very quickly. I keep going back to ATMs. People didn't lose their jobs. They just started doing other things better. I keep going back to airport check-ins. All of you guys travel. Remember how we had those large, long lines in airports, and then kiosks showed up, and then mobile devices showed up, and there are no lines anymore? But all those people there are doing other things, and they're doing those things better, right? So digital transformation is not going to stop. People are just going to start doing more and more things better, and the operational efficiencies are going to become much and much improved as time goes on. And that's really the story. It's when we say, oh, economy is tight, that's the right time to do digital transformation, because that's what it's aimed towards, to making things cheaper, making them faster, improving operation efficiencies, and so on and so forth. So,
Thank you. With that, we'll come to an end. Thank you to our speakers today for this great discussion.
Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you, guys.